At night when we are watching television, it is nice to feel at ease. We want to laugh and be charmed. The Graham Norton Show is very good at making us feel this way. It invites stars to come on the show and be themselves. They try to make us laugh and have a time. Sometimes when things are live on television, more is shown than we expected. Underneath the jokes and the clapping, something else can come out. Maybe someone says something that is supposed to be funny. It is not really funny. Maybe someone says what they really think. It is not what we want to hear. Maybe someone does not say anything. That says a lot too. These things are not. We do not forget them. The Graham Norton Show is still fun to watch. Sometimes things happen that make us think about the Graham Norton Show in a different way. The people on the Graham Norton Show sometimes say things that not very nice and can cause a lot of trouble. Here are 6 Graham Norton guests who said things that made people feel uneasy and wonder about things. Number 1, Mel Gibson. When Mel Gibson came to the couch, it was not about promoting something. It was more about the things that people remember about him. A time ago, before the cameras started rolling, Mel Gibson had already said some things that hurt a lot of people, especially Jewish people. This made it hard for him to be liked in Hollywood. When he was on the show, he seemed like he was being very careful about what he said. It was like he was trying to be charming. People still remember the bad things he did in the past. Mel Gibson has been carrying around the weight of his actions for a very long time, and it was clear when he was in the studio. Gibson was a big deal in the movie business. People loved watching him act because he always seemed sure of himself and willing to take a stand. Movies like Braveheart and the Lethal Weapon series made him a hero to a lot of people. He was like a symbol of being tough and strong. When he got angry on screen, it felt like he was fighting for something. Gibson had a hard time turning that anger off when the cameras stopped rolling. When people heard recordings of him yelling at others, they started to see him in a way. They did not think he was so great anymore. Gibson's talent was not the thing people thought about when they thought of him. They thought about his temper too. Gibson's movies were still popular. People did not admire Gibson as much as they used to. When Gibson was on the Graham Norton Show, things were different. This was not a fun visit to talk about his work. It was a deal because everyone was watching him. Gibson was very careful about what he did, said. He moved slowly, thought before he spoke. He only joked a bit. The Graham Norton Show is usually a place because Norton is a nice guy, but this time it was not so relaxed. People laughed. It was like they were not sure if they should be laughing. They were thinking about whether laughing meant they were okay with what Gibson had done. The Graham Norton Show is a deal, and Gibson was on it, so everyone was watching him. Years earlier, when people were talking about the controversy, Gibson said he was out of control and that what he did was really bad. He said that a lot after that every time he was on television or something. It was always in the back of people's minds when they watched him, even when he was just telling jokes. People did not just listen to his stories, they were also thinking about what he had done. He was trying to show that he was not that person anymore, the person who did those bad things that were recorded. What made this moment really interesting was that it was not finished. There was no fight or anything. Nobody said sorry or got forgiven. The segment showed that people usually figure things out in public, not by talking a lot, by being quiet. Gibson did not say much. He listened a lot. He let the silence do what talking cannot do. He let the silence do its job. It was powerful. The public reckoning it is like that. It often happens when people are quiet, like Gibson was. Number 2, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase came to us as a guy from a long time ago, but people are starting to think about him in a different way. There were a lot of stories about Chevy Chase saying things that were not nice to people of races and doing things that were not okay. Chase was a part of American comedy for a long time. He was known for being funny in a mean way. People liked him on Saturday Night Live and in movies like Caddyshack and National Lampoon's Vacation. He would often act like he did not care what people thought of him. That was supposed to be funny. This worked because people thought he was being sarcastic. Then people he worked with started telling stories about how he really acted, and it was not just an act. He was actually hurting people. That was not funny at all. It got hard to tell when he was just playing a character and when he was being himself. Chase was still being Chase. It was not funny anymore. When Chase was on the Graham Norton show, people were already talking about those stories. They were like a part of watching the show. Chase being there made people feel a little uncomfortable. It was not like something was going to happen, but you could feel it all the time. The stories about Chase had become a deal, and people were waiting to see what would happen when Chase was on the Graham Norton show. The thing that made this part so interesting was not that someone yelled at each other, but that it showed how different things are now. Chase did not get really mad. Say sorry in a big way. What happened was that it showed how changes in culture can make famous people feel alone. The way Chase talked was still the same. The people around him were different now. They were not laughing just because they thought they should. They were thinking about what he said and deciding if it was okay. Later, when Chase was talking about what people thought of him else, he said that he never tried to make everyone like him. When he said that, it was like he was defending himself and also being honest at the time. It helped people understand who Chase is. It also meant he did not have to deal with the bad things he might have done. The cultural shifts and Chase are what made this moment stand out. Chase and his way of talking are still the same. The cultural shifts and the people around him have changed. Chevy Chase was on Graham Norton's show. He did not do badly. What happened was that time caught up with Chevy Chase. On Graham Norton's couch, Chevy Chase still had timing. Chevy Chase lost the idea that having good timing was all that mattered for Chevy Chase. Number 3. Jeremy Clarkson. Jeremy Clarkson is a person who likes to say things that get a reaction from people. There have been times when Jeremy Clarkson said things about race that people did not like. When Jeremy Clarkson appears in public, people still remember these things. Sometimes Jeremy Clarkson tries to be funny. It does not always work. It feels like Jeremy Clarkson is trying hard to be shocking, and people are not laughing anymore. They are starting to think about how Jeremy Clarkson's words can hurt people, and that's a problem for Jeremy Clarkson. Clarkson's rise was about shaking things up. He was the guy on Top Gear. He would say things that people did not like. He said them anyway. He knew a lot about cars. He also liked to argue with people. This made some people really mad. Others thought he was great. For a time, this worked for him. People liked that he would say what he thought even if it was not what others wanted to hear. He said it was just him being honest. Then he started saying some things that got him into trouble. He made some comments about race and culture that a lot of people did not like. This started to change how people saw him. Clarkson's way of doing things was not working like it used to. What used to seem like Clarkson being a little funny and not caring what people thought started to look like he just did not care about other people's feelings. This was especially true when more people from around the world were watching. They knew more about different cultures. When Clarkson was on Graham Norton's show, you could see this change in the way they talked to each other in the studio. They still joked around. They were more careful about what they said. Graham Norton is really good at making people feel comfortable, so he helped make the conversation more relaxed. He did not make it so boring that it felt like nothing was happening. The conversation was able to flow, but it never got too comfortable or predictable. Number 4, Morrissey. Morrissey was a man who made people feel uncomfortable. This was because of things he said outside of music. People know him for being an artist, but some people do not like him because of what he says about his country. They think he is not very nice to people of races. When he was on stage, he did not seem friendly. This is because a lot of people are confused about what they think of him. For a time, Morrissey was one of the most important people in British music and art. Morrissey has a lot of influence. What Morrissey says has made it hard for people to like Morrissey. The Smiths had an impact on people because of the way the frontman of the Smiths wrote his songs. The frontman of the Smiths wrote about feeling alone and being vulnerable. The frontman of the Smiths also wrote about what it's like to be an outsider. The Smiths helped a lot of people who felt like they did not fit in. What made the segment linger was the feeling it gave people. There was no fight or loud argument. Instead, there was space. Space that the people watching filled with thoughts about what was not being said. Morrissey's silence meant something. It showed that when people stop trusting someone, it does not always happen with a noise. Usually, it happens slowly over time. Later, when Morrissey thought about his relationship with the people who listened to his music, Morrissey said that he had always been different from the mainstream. At one time, being different was a thing for Morrissey. Now it sounded like Morrissey was just giving up. The way Morrissey stood outside the crowd had helped him make his music. Now it was getting in the way. When Morrissey was on Graham Norton's show, you could see that his past and what people thought of him were not really connected. They just existed separately, and that was really something. Sometimes not saying anything all can be louder than arguing, and that is what happened with Morrissey on Graham Norton's couch. Morrissey's appearance on the show did not change what people thought of him, it just showed that there were some problems with his legacy. Number 5. John Cleese. John Cleese made a name for himself by making fun of the people in charge. Now people are looking at his work in a different way. John Cleese has gotten into trouble for saying that some words are okay to use even if they might hurt some people. This has made some people think he is not sensitive to the feelings of others. When John Cleese started out, he was known for being funny and irreverent. He made fun of things that people thought were too important to joke about. With the show Monty Python's Flying Circus, John Cleese helped to make people laugh at the things that were once considered serious to make fun of. He did this by being silly and absurd, which made the people in power look ridiculous. John Cleese was very good at making fun of the people who thought they were better than everyone. People like the bureaucrat or the self-important intellectual showed us what our society is really like. This approach felt really good for a time. Comedy was a way to make fun of the people in charge. It was like comedy was a weapon that we used to talk to them to point out how silly they were being. Comedy was a weapon aimed upward at the people who thought they were better than everyone. The John Cleese segment was really good because of this. The difference is in the situation, which something that people who watch things today think about a lot. John Cleese being on the show was not a deal where everyone got mad. It was a moment when things could go either way. It reminded us that comedy has to change to stay funny. It cannot just stay the same. When John Cleese was sitting on Graham Norton's couch, he was being strong and thinking about what he had done, and comedy showed us what it needs to do, not how to surprise people, but how to listen to them. Comedy needs to keep changing like John Cleese did when he was on Graham Norton's show. Number 6. Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne was on the show. People were really upset about what she said before. They thought her comments were racist. That is why they were mad. Sharon Osbourne is known for telling it like it is. She walked into the studio. Everyone was watching her. This was a moment because it showed how fast people can change their minds about someone. When you stick up for someone, people think you agree with them. Sharon Osbourne has been on television for a time, and people liked her because she was honest. She was a manager and a judge on talent shows. She always said what she thought. Sharon Osbourne built her career on being straightforward and saying things that other people did not want to say. People thought that being blunt was the same as being honest. They even saw it as being brave. When people watched or listened to something, they wanted to hear the truth. They wanted to hear it straight away, without anyone beating around the bush. The truth was what people came to expect. They liked it when it was delivered in a sharp and straightforward way, without any hesitation. The thing that made Osbourne so appealing at first became the reason for her biggest problem when people saw her being loyal, as standing up for comments that a lot of people thought were bad. When Osbourne went on the Graham Norton show, things were different. This was not a famous television person coming on to chat about nothing important. The mood was serious. Graham Norton was still being friendly. You could tell that what they were talking about was important. Osbourne chose her words carefully, knowing that everything she said would be looked at closely. The audience was really paying attention. They were very polite. They were not cheering or anything, they were just listening. This shows that people's expectations are changing and they want something now. The audience response was a sign that people are looking for a restrained and attentive experience. The room was full of people who were just listening to what was being said. That says a lot about the kind of change that is happening in our culture. The audience response was a sign of this change in expectations. These people who came on the show were not guys or funny characters. They were people who had been changed by being successful, having big egos, being scared, and trying to adjust to new things when they were used to doing things a certain way. What happened on Graham Norton's stage was not about judging them, about showing what they are really like. The kind of thing that you think about after everyone has stopped clapping. Being famous does not stop time. It keeps moving, and everything these famous people say is remembered, and the people watching them change, even if the famous people themselves do not want to change. The guests, like the people who came on the show, are still people who have to deal with fame and all that comes with it. These moments matter because they show culture in motion, negotiating where humor ends, where responsibility begins, and how legacy is rewritten in real time, often in uncomfortable silence. Which moment stayed with you the most? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories where television reveals more than it intends.